everybody? So Rich here with part 2 of my Ramones videos. I did a 70s Ramones albums video. Now this is going to be an 80s and a little bit more. Now I made a mistake. I misstated something. I did see the Ramones in the 70s. I think in that last video I said I didn't see them until like 81 or so. But no, I saw them. I believe it was like 78. I could have looked it up. But they were the opening band for Black Sabbath. Now, I thought, wow, that's a great lineup, you know. I thought, wow, that's a fantastic pairing. I guess the the rest of the crowd didn't think so. The Ramones, man, they played a short set. There was actual beer bottles being thrown at them. So that was actually the worst time that I saw the Ramones. And Black Sabbath wasn't all that good either, man. I guess that was the cocaine years. I think Ozzy was hanging on by a thread at that time. I do have a little bit of notes here. I'll probably go to them because I don't know these albums as good as I do the 70s ones. The 70s ones, I played a lot from the 70s on. But let's get started with the Ramones, End of the Century. Came out in 1980. And this is the Phil Spector produced album. They wanted commercial success, and they never did achieve that. I believe this is their biggest selling album of all time. And this is probably, of all the 80s albums, this is probably the one I played the least. Okay, it starts off with, Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? A really good start to this album, man. It actually has sax and keyboards in it. Which makes for a different sound, a fuller sound, a wall of sound. Then it goes into I'm Affected, a good rocker. This Phil Spector experiment may work. This is actually a lot better than I remembered it being. I've referred to this album as being half great and half turd, you know, and that's not a fair assessment at all. Danny says, now that song has wanker written all over it, but it's actually a really well-written song. It's a really good song, man. Then you got Chinese Rocks, which for me is the monster on the album and should have been released as a single. You got The Return of Jackie and Judy. Let's see what I say about that one. A typical Ramones song with a more polished sound. And then it ends with Let's Go, a really good rocker. Now, side 2 starts off with Baby I Love You, which is the wanker on the album. It's probably the one, it's the one bad song on the album. It was the first single off the album, I think. And then they released Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio and that other one, Rock and Roll High School. I think there was 3 singles released off of this. They should have released Chinese Rocks, man. That song it has got a killer hook. It really rocks hard. But yeah. And then Baby I Love You is followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bangers, man. It's all good, you know. I Can't Make It on Time is kind of a mid-tempo. This Ain't Havana is probably my favorite on this side. Rock and Roll High School, fast tempo, should have been a hit. A bit of a 50s feel. All the Way, another fast tempo song. And High Rise, Insurance, and ending the album with another fast tempo song. Very good. Now I'm going to show this live album. It was a record store day. Recorded in Sydney, Australia, July 8th, 1980. And I picked this up. There's been a lot of Ramones live albums released. quite a few on Record Store Day. And I only have the one other than this, and that was like the 76 shows. It's a good album. It's not as good as the 76 album that I have. And this album, the reason I got it, because it does have some songs off of this album, which they didn't really play a lot of those songs, after this tour, actually, And yeah, you got Rock and Roll High School, and whatever. Now, what's apparent is the songs from End of the Century are not as good as the earlier songs. When you hear them right side by side, it's not quite as good. Now, their second album from the 80s is Pleasant Dreams. Now, this is a good one, man. This also has a more of a commercial sound than their 70s stuff. And this came out in 81. I don't know if I said that. Okay. We Want the Airwaves and She's a Sensation should have been giant hits. They're the first song on side 1, and She's a Sensation is the first song on side 2. But We Want the Airwaves, dude. That song is great, dude. Both of those songs. 7-Eleven, a bit of a wanker. I think it's probably the only wanker on the album. And I got a note here. Graham Goldman from 10cc produced this. A band that I know nothing of. I've never heard a 10cc album. But yeah, overall, this is a good album. It's not my favorite, although I believe this is some people's favorite. It does have a good sound to it. Now, this is a bootleg. It's the demos. And it's okay. It's kind of muddy sounding. It's not as clear as that. It's definitely not as polished as that, the original, the album. But other than that, it's kind of muddy too. So I was kind of disappointed. Now, I know they released Pleasant Dreams, some other takes for Record Store Day, and I'm wondering if it's better than that bootleg I have. Now, the third album they came out with, probably my favorite. Well, let's put it this way. This was definitely the most played album from the 80s. Most of these albums from the 80s, I bought used. With the the first 3 I bought new. This is the last one. All the rest I bought in the used bins back in the 80s, Now, this one I had a cassette of. I played it a lot in the car. I played it a lot at home. This is by far the Ramones album from the 80s that I played the most. Now, this one has a bit of a different sound, too. The guitars are definitely heavier, and the drums sound a little different. Some people, like Ryan Kidd, he doesn't like the sound of the drums on this. I don't mind them at all. But you got Outsider and Highest Trails Above. Very heavy guitars, man. And I just dig it, man. I think Highest Trails Above is probably my favorite song on the album. Psychotherapy was the single. A great traditional Ramones single and a long line of great ones. And then it ends with one of the greatest song titles ever. It's Every Time I Eat Vegetables, It Makes Me Think of You. Very good album, man. Then the next one, they came out with another album the very following year, 1984, Too Tough to Die. Very cool cover. Now it starts off with sha-la-la-la. No, that side 2 starts off with, Howling at the Moon. Sha-la-la-la. Very cool, catchy song. Like a 60s girl group sound, And that is followed by Daytime Dilemma. Maybe the best song on the album. Now, I don't know why I'm talking about side 2 first. Tommy Ramone produced this one. So they said it had a similar feel in the studio. It was like the good old days, Mama's Boy is the opening song on the album, and it is fantastic, man. Mama's Boy. That's one thing about the Ramones. Joey Ramone, man, had a fantastic voice. The fourth song, Warthog, is of note because no one knows what Dee Dee was singing. And I think Dee Dee, he had another, I think he had 2 songs off of this album. And a lot of this, not much of this was written by Joey, actually. Most of it was written by Dee Dee Ramone. And that's 84. Then we got 86. They skipped a year. And this one is Animal Boy. Now this album reminds me of In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. The King Crimson debut, the album that all the prog heads love. I remember the first time I heard that, the 20th Century Schizoid, I think is the opening song. I go, man, I've never heard anything like this. This is great. And then that is followed by some of the, and I thought it was going to be one of the greatest albums ever. And I think it's a turd. I mean, it's not a turd, but I was very disappointed. And kind of the same with this. The album starts off with Somebody Put Something in My Drink. A fantastic song. And then it's got Animal Boy. Now, those 2 songs, they're very different than anything they had done before. And I was thinking, man, this is not only going to be one of my favorite Ramones albums from the 80s, this is going to be one of my favorite Ramones albums, period. I mean, that's how much those first 2 songs are, or how good they are. Then you got Dee Dee's Love Kills. It's not very good. 8-Man Hop is okay. That's the next song. She Belongs to Me and Crummy Stuff are the 2 last songs on side 1. And they're the worst songs in a row that the Ramones ever put on a record. So side 1 of this, it starts out great and it falls off a cliff, in my opinion. Now side 2 starts with My Brain is Hanging Upside Down, one of my favorite songs. And it's more well known as Bonzo Goes to Blitberg, or whatever. Most of side 1 has a heavy sound. I mean, side 1, side 2. I think the rest of the side 2 is amazing. But side 1 is what kills it, this album. Now, I do have a 12-inch single. I have a couple of 12-inch singles from the Ramones. And they were like in the marked down. These are like, I think they're UK singles. And they were like marked down to $2 or $3. Originally priced like at $8 or $9, you know. So $2 or $3, I bought it. And side 1 is Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. Side 2 is Go Home Ann, which is a song I don't believe is on any of their records. And then the last song is Daytime Dilemma, which is actually on the previous album, this one. So you got one song from here and one song from here on this 12-inch single. But yeah, Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. That's why I bought this. But Daytime Dilemma is fantastic too. Their next album, Halfway to Sanity. Now this one came out in 87. This is probably the least favorite of the critics. I looked it up. It gets 1.5 stars. Where say the previous one gets 3 stars. End of the Century, 4 stars, you know. It starts with I Wanna Live. It's a very heavy song with feedback. Most of side 1 has a very heavy sound to it, actually. Go Little Camaro, Go. It's the lighthearted song on side 1, and it's a catchy duet with Debbie Harry from Blondie. And their vocals are great together, man. I wish they would have done, made an album together. That would have been a really good album. They're kind of like Exene and John Doe. But yeah, these two are better. It's really, really good. I would say there's Weasel Face on here and Worm Man. Those two songs are kind of like a hardcore punk sound to it. They're very heavy. And then Bye Bye Baby is the longest song on the album. I think it's 4.5 minutes. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. It kind of drags a little too long for me. It's very kind of a slower song, but it's a good song, man. It's not bad at all. And this is one of my more favorite albums. I like the heaviness of it. Now we got Brain Drain. The last album they released in the 80s came out in 89. Now this is a fantastic album. It starts off with I Believe in Miracles. It's a pleasant Ramones number. And then it goes into 00 UFO. Blistering fast guitars. One of my favorites off of this album. Punishment Fits the Crime. Kind of drags on, and it really isn't very catchy. The next song really isn't very catchy either, All Screwed Up. But it ends with Palisades Park. It's a cover song, and it's a great ending to side one. Pet Cemetery is the first song on side two. Fantastic song. I think it was their highest charting song. Can't Get You Out of My Mind is a mid-tempo song that is better than the two mid-tempo songs on side one. Punishment Fits the Crime and All Screwed Up. Can't You Get You Out of My Mind is a good song. And then side two ends with a Christmas song. A very, very good song, man. And there's a couple of songs I didn't mention on side two, and they're very heavy, very, very good. That's a good album. Now this is another 12-inch that I picked up. And this has 4 songs from this album. There's no unreleased stuff on this. It's got Pet Cemetery, then the Merry Christmas song, got All Screwed Up, and then it's got that one 00 UFO that I really dig. Now in 89, after this album, this was the last album that Dee Dee Ramone was on. And 89, he released his first solo album. He has a number of solo albums, but this is the only one I've ever seen. Oh, look at. Like I said, I bought most of these used. In fact, I think all of them except for the first 3 that I've shown so far. But yeah, gold stamp promo. Now this, they call this the rap album. It isn't really a rap album. He kind of talks through some of the songs. He sings on some of the other songs. The first song is Mashed Potato Time. And that reminds me of a Monster Mash. The Monster Mash. If I remember right, it has kind of the same tempo. Some of these songs, they're not very good. He's, like I said, he sings on some, he talks on some. But this album has some really good guitars on it. I'm not sure who plays guitars. I should have looked it up. But man, whatever. Now this one, when did this thing come out? I don't know. This is their 90s album. And it's Acid Eaters, is it? Yeah, Acid Eaters. This is a cover album. I think this is their second album from the 90s. This is not an original. This is a reissue. It's one of those Russian, probably a bootleg. It sounds great, though. I think I mentioned before, I was at Underground Records maybe 7, 8 years ago, or something like that. And I saw I think it was all three. It was at least 2 of their 90s albums in them. And then I looked at them and I noticed they weren't on Sire Records, and I thought, oh, these are, reissues. When I got home, I looked it up, and they weren't. They were the originals. They weren't on Sire Records in the 90s. But yeah, this is really good, man. Ryan Kidd does not like this album, but I think it's fantastic. And we're going to end it with a really good album, man. Joey Ramone. This came out in 2002, and it's Don't Worry About Me, which is a great song. Great sentiment. He does What a Wonderful World, and it is beautiful, considering he knew he was dying, and it's just a really heartfelt album, and Joey Ramone, man. Anyways, that's it. Go Dodgers! Take care, everybody.